We're going to be looking at the truth about buying your first buy to let property. A good friend of mine once said, if someone tells you that property investing is easy or simple, they're probably trying to sell you a course. A lot of people think that property investing is going to be a quick win. You know, you're going to be a millionaire next month or next year. It's not true. Today, we're going to talk through the pros and cons of buying a buy to let property. Should you consider it? Is it something that's for you? Is it something that will help you and your family make money? Make sure you watch all the way until the end because we'll be going through a lot of very important information. And always remember that, as with anything mortgage related, your home is at risk if you don't keep up the repayments on your mortgage. We're very fortunate to live in a country where you can actually have private property, and building a property portfolio for some people is a good way of establishing wealth and generational wealth. But why buy to let? Property can build your long-term wealth, and you need to consider things like generating rental income. You need to think about creating a retirement income and diversifying your investment. These are some of the reasons why someone might consider investing in property as a way of building wealth. As I said, anytime you're talking about property, do remember that your home is at risk. These videos are not here to give you tax advice, legal advice, or to replace speaking to a professional. My name is Anthony Lindsay, and I've been in finance for over 30 years. I've done lending, I've done wealth management, I've done mortgages, and I've done collection. I do these videos that I can explain topics to you that my clients ask me about frequently, but always speak to a mortgage broker. Don't get your legal advice, your tax advice, or your medical advice from some guy on the internet or some girl. I am here to make sure that you understand things that when you speak to a professional, you can actually get the information that you need and you have somewhere that you can sanity check it. So, is right to buy something that's good for you? Do you want a second income? Do you understand the recent reforms? This is an important thing. There's been some recent reforms in the UK that can affect how you manage your property. Can you afford unexpected repairs? And are you investing for at least 10 years? So we've recently had something called renters reform, and renters reform has fundamentally changed the way that landlords manage their property because it's given the tenants a lot more rights. It's given the landlord a lot more responsibilities and things that they have to do. So if you're considering being a property investor, what you want to also understand is what it means as far as time, as far as commitment and understanding. It's no longer, and I don't think it ever was, but it's no longer something that you can just buy a property, rent it out, and expect money to be flowing in. You're going to have to do the work if you want to be successful. If you want it to be something that does create generational wealth for you and you want to be a landlord, then it's very important that you understand the new laws and the new regulation. Property should be viewed as a long term investment. So, how much do you need for a deposit? The thing is, it's a lot different with a buy to let property. So if you're buying a buy to let property, the way that the deposits work is different than a residential property. This is why speaking to a mortgage broker is vital. Usually, for a residential home, depending on your profile, you could maybe get a deposit of 5%. People always talk about that magic 5% figure or 10%. What you'll find with buy to let mortgages, you're typically going to need about 25%. Sometimes it's 20%, sometimes it might be more than the 25%. But just as a rule of thumb, you're going to need about a 25% deposit. The other things that you need to take and keep in mind are the way that the deal will be structured. So here's a good example. You have a £200,000 property. You're going to need a 25% deposit. So that's £50,000. So that means a mortgage of £150,000. So that's the amount that you're borrowing from the bank. But you have to keep in mind that in addition to the deposit, you're also going to have to think about legal fees, valuation fees, possibly. You're going to think about broker fees and product fees. A big mistake that a lot of people make when it comes to mortgages in general, but specifically to investment property, is they forget that the product fee is in addition to all of the other fees. So, what do I mean by that? The first question people usually ask when they're getting a mortgage is this the cheapest rate? What you'll find, particularly with buy to let mortgages, is the lowest rates usually have the highest fees. I've seen people who are purchasing and they're like, just give me the lowest rate. And the product fee by itself might be 15 or 25,000 pounds. So don't get caught up in this I need the cheapest rate mentality. Look at the affordability, look at the other fees involved. Yes, you can add the fee to the mortgage, but you're doing this to make money. So you want to make sure that the amount you're making each month, the time that you have it fixed, all of these things are going to stack up in a way that you're making money and you're putting money in your pocket and you're building equity and generating generational wealth. How do lenders decide? If you've never done a mortgage before, if you've never done a buy to let mortgage, you might not understand that there's different factors that they're going to look at. Unlike a residential mortgage, where they just look at your income. So when you're doing a residential mortgage, they're more looking at your income, your situation. With a buy to let mortgage, the buy to let property is the security. So there are lenders that will lend to people that don't have a job because they're going to look at the rental income on the property as opposed to the individual's income. And that also means that you could be an older person. I've done buy to let mortgages for people in their 70s and in their 80s. Because again, the mortgage term is not going to be based on how long they're working. It's based on the fact that the property is generating an income, which is why it's important for you to understand, is this property the right property for you? So the lenders are going to look at the expected income, your deposit size, your credit history. Are you already a homeowner? Why is that important? Lenders look at something called first time buyer, first time homeowner, if you don't already have a residential property. And some lenders will not lend to someone that has not got a residential property already. They'll look at your experience sometimes. Do you have other properties? Your age and future plans. They'll look at the size. Maybe this is not your first buy to let property. So maybe you're buying an additional one. Maybe you were what they call an accidental landlord. So you had a property and maybe you inherited another property that you're now trying to convert to a buy to let. This is a special product, actually. This is a product called a consumer buy to let. So a consumer buy to let means, let's just say I'm living in my home, which I own and have a mortgage on, and then I inherit another property. I'm not going to live in the other property. So I need to get a mortgage for that other property. That's not a standard buy to let. That's what they call a consumer buy to let. I do have some videos on that. So make sure you watch those that you can understand, because the criteria for that can be a little bit tricky and not every lender does consumer buy to let mortgages. So before you start this whole process, if you speak to a good mortgage broker, let them understand what you need, why you need it, what the criteria is. They'll be able to find you a lender that you meet the criteria for. They'll be able to go through some illustrations with you, and you'll know that you're getting the right product. Buying your very first buy to let property can be tricky. Even your second or third or fifth can be tricky, which is why you need professional advice. The biggest mistakes that new landlords make. Now, I can say this. I find that a lot of people, what it is that they're online and they're seeing all of these things about, being a property investor. Quite often, an ad has popped up on their YouTube and they're like, you can invest in property. I'll show you how. It's sign up for this free course. It becomes a sales funnel for you to join a paying course that you can then essentially learn how to invest in property. But here's the thing that you usually see: the person that's running the course, and I'm not knocking courses, but the person that is running the course has a list of people. They have brokers, they have lenders, they have sources, they have all these people that they want you to work with. Again, I'm not knocking courses, but what I want you to understand is the mistake that a lot of people make is they then turn off their brain. I've seen people lose thousands and thousands of pounds because they go on these courses, they work with these people that they're referred to, and don't get the outcomes that they want. So I would say one of the top mistakes that people make as first time buyers going into the buy to let market is trusting so called experts. My view on this is that if you are a property investor and generating tons of money doing property investing, that's where you're making your money. But some people are more making their money from selling the courses and getting the referral fees from all the people that they're going to refer you to than actually doing the property investing themselves. Again, I'm not knocking courses. I'm just saying, don't switch your brain off. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Do your due diligence, ask questions, ask for referrals of other people. Do your research on the internet, because what you will probably find is if this person is really more focused on selling the course than helping you be successful, there'll probably be some feedback on the internet. That's one of the top things. I would say buying with emotion, which is kind of tied to that point, underestimating the costs. It's not a get rich quick scheme. Things can go wrong, so be prepared for things to go wrong. Forgetting about maintenance. So you'll buy the property. What if the boiler breaks? What if the roof falls in? All of these things can happen. They choose the wrong mortgage, or they deliberately take out the wrong mortgage, which I have a video on that as well. Not researching the local rental market. And that also could be just relying on what the estate agent is telling you. If you go to an estate agent and you're talking to an estate agent about a property you're trying to buy for a buy to let property, especially if it's your first time, do your own independent research, scrutinize what the estate agent is telling you. Make sure that these numbers and these figures are correct, because when you're going for the mortgage, the lender is going to do their own assessment of what the rental income is. And if the estate agent hasn't given you an accurate figure, it could make the whole deal just fall apart. And another mistake that they make is only looking at the property price instead of the cash flow. So is the property you're buying in a good area? Obviously, one of the best areas you can be in if you're looking for a buy to let property that you're going to be renting out is maybe a place that has a university nearby. That way, you have a constant set of students that may want to rent the property. Is it near a hospital? So you'll have nurses who might be moving to that area to work at that hospital. All of these things are things that you want to look at. A good estate agent will be able to assist you with that because they'll be able to tell you what the rental market actually looks like. But again, do your own research, go on the internet, ask questions, and if you can, find someone that's an experienced investor that you know and trust, that's in the same area, that can give you some practical insights. Most people make money off their property investments in the sense that in the long run, they make money. But some people don't continue to rinse, wash, repeat, meaning do multiple, because they had such a nightmare when they bought the first property. And instead of documenting what they did, asking questions and coming up with a system, they say, you know what, that was too much of a headache. I have this property, it's making me some money. I give up. But if you follow what I'm saying now, and if you do the right research and have the right people around you, your first property will not be your last property, and it will be something that you can count on to give you a retirement income and generational wealth. So those are really the top mistakes that landlords make when they're buying their first property. Another question a lot of people ask is, should I buy in personal name or should I buy in a limited company? The answer is depends. If you are considering buying a buy to let property and you're not sure if you should buy through your personal name or through a limited company, what you would probably want to do, speak to an accountant. So there's different people that have different disciplines that are going to give you different levels of advice. But I would say speak to an accountant, explain to the accountant what your long-term goals are with your family, with your retirement, and are you going to be buying multiple properties realistically, not pie in the sky, but are you realistically going to be buying 2, 3, 4 properties over the next several years? If you are, and that accountant gives you the advice that maybe buying through a limited company may be the best thing, then the answer is yes. But you'll also need to speak to a mortgage broker, because the accountant is going to give you the tax type implications and a little bit of estate planning guidance. But the mortgage broker is going to understand the products. They're going to understand which lenders will lend based on you having three or more properties, five or more, 10 or more, because not every lender will lend to people that have too many properties. So you do have some specialist lenders that will lend to people with 10 or more properties. You have some that will only lend to people that have five or fewer. So speak to an accountant that you can get guidance on. Should you set up a limited company or should you buy in personal name? I would say, as a rule of thumb, if you're only going to have one property, then maybe just buying in your personal name might be less expensive, especially if you're not a high rate taxpayer. But again, I'm not giving tax advice or legal advice. I'm just giving guidance that if you're buying your first buy to let property, and it's probably going to be the only buy to let property that you buy, you may consider just buying in your personal name rather than adding all of the additional admin that's required if you set up a limited company or what they call a SPV. And here's why professional advice matters. I'm talking through all of these things, 30 years of experience in finance, but you need to speak to a professional that you're telling your individual circumstances. Two people with a similar profile on paper may have different needs. They may have different appetites for risk. They may not even plan on retiring in the UK, and therefore they don't want too much going on here. Or maybe conversely, because they don't plan on retiring in the UK, they want to have UK pounds coming in and maybe spending dollars or spending in the Caribbean or in Africa where the pound is way stronger. But you're going to need professional advice. And as I said, you need, I'd say, three tiers of professional advice. First and foremost, you need a broker. The broker is going to understand all of the products and the mortgage products. You're also going to need an accountant. So speak to an accountant that can talk you through the tax implications, especially if, as I said, you're planning on retiring abroad. You also want to speak to an estate planner. I see this all the time, and I can say it hurts my heart. I see people build up portfolios. They have 3, 4, 5, 7, 11 properties and have never talked to an estate planner. In their mind, that person's just in my pocket. They're just talking about wills and they're talking about trusts, etc. And that's going to cost me money. Always speak to an estate planner as you're trying to build your portfolio. Because what you don't want is to work hard, invest all your time, your energy, your money in building something that, in your mind, is something that's going to create generational wealth. But because you don't protect it, you don't have a trust and you don't have the right things in place, it means that when you die, either the government's going to swoop in and take what they want, it's going to get tied up in probate. Your kids and grandkids may not understand what you wanted, and therefore it can cause disputes. I get calls about it at least twice a month where a parent or a grandparent has passed away. They've left several properties, no will, which means that it goes into probate. Everybody has a different view on how much they should be getting. And quite often, it's not out of greed or selfishness. It's just because the person that passed away didn't put their will or their intent in writing. So always speak to an estate planner. Always speak to an accountant, always speak to a mortgage broker. Some of the information may conflict because they're all trying to give you professional advice from their area of expertise, but make sure that you speak to all three because all three of them are important. The other thing that you're going to want to understand is that lenders offer different products. So more likely than not, your high street lender is not going to be who you go to as a portfolio landlord. So not every lender offers buy to let. Quite often, the main high street big lenders may not offer portfolio type buy to lets. Some specialize in first time landlords. As I said, you could be a first time landlord or you can be a first time buyer, first time landlord, which is a little bit different. Some specialize in portfolio landlords with 5 or more properties or 10 or more properties. Some specialize in what we call the SPVs or limited companies. So you're buying through a limited company, not through your personal name. Others specialize in HMOs. So these are homes where maybe it was a 4 or 5 bedroom home. The person has made it so that multiple people can rent out rooms and live in the home. In a lot of boroughs now, you do need a license for HMOs or holiday lets. Be careful with this. So I would say just be really careful with the whole Airbnb model, because a lot of leases, if you're getting a leasehold apartment, a lot of leases may have restrictions on renting it out on an Airbnb platform. It may have blackout dates that you can only do it for a certain amount of days per month. Always operate within the guidelines of the policies and the law and the regulations. Don't operate in the gray area. It will come back and bite you. And again, I'm not giving tax or legal advice. I'm just giving you information. Always speak to a professional. Always read the fine print. Always understand what it is that you're signing. So this is why you're going to need professional advice, that they can help keep you out of trouble, make sure that you have the right product for the right reason. Here's a real life lesson. So I've spoken to people over time who believe that they couldn't invest because they thought they needed a huge income or years of experience, or they needed to go on some course. And often the issue wasn't whether they could invest, it was understanding the right strategy. So by speaking to a professional, the right lender, and the right property. Preparation is always going to be better than rushing into it. So make sure that you're preparing, making sure that you're having the conversations with the right people, and not because you're paying them, but because they're paid to give you advice through you being successful. So as a mortgage broker, I don't get paid unless I complete something for you. So we don't charge fees in advance. I make these videos that you can understand products, but when you get through to me, we'll have a one-on-one conversation, and I'll be able to support you in your first time property or second or third. But if you're a first time buyer, you do need that additional bit of support. So here are the key takeaways. Before buying your first buy-to-let property, understand your investment goals. So understand, what is it you're trying to accomplish. If you're trying to make some quick money, then property investing probably isn't for you. But if you're looking for a long-term investment to build generational wealth and maybe to create a retirement pension pot for yourself, then it might be something that you look at. Budget for all costs. Don't budget based on best case scenario. Budget based on worst case scenario. What if you're buying a property that needs a little bit of refurb, but then it turns out needing a lot of refurb? What if you're unable to get someone in as quickly as you thought? Always think about the what ifs. These are some of the things that a good broker will go through with you to make sure that you thought of them. Research the rental market, choose the right mortgage, and build a long-term strategy. Because as I said, anyone that's telling you that this is easy and that you can just, go and look at a TikTok clip and then get up and running and you're a property investor, they're probably trying to sell you a course, or they're more focused on getting paid to do one thing for you than helping you actually build something that is going to be successful over a period of time. So you're going to want to have the right team. And this is something that people forget as well. More likely than not, you have people in your network, whether they talk about it or they don't, who are investing in property. Try to find someone who probably isn't out there bragging about their huge portfolio, someone who's quietly been building wealth. There's lots of people in my circle that, until I started doing these videos, I didn't even know they have 4 or 5 properties, because they're just doing it quietly. Those are the type of people who usually, if you say, look, I'm trying to get started, can you give me some advice? Tell me what you wish you had known when you first started. Those are the best people to talk to. They're not going to charge you for their time. They may not be experts, but they'll be able to tell you things that they wish they had known, and then you can talk to your broker about it. So property investing is not for everybody. It sounds sexy to say, I have a property portfolio, but it's a lot of hard work. So you're going to want to surround yourself with good people. These are the key things that you want to look at. And here is what you need to do to prepare. So if you're going to consider going on the buy-to-let property investing pathway, make sure that you do your homework, check your finances. If you're married, make sure you're speaking to the other partner, because this isn't something that you should be doing by yourself. So make sure you speak to the other partner. Make sure you check your credit report. If you've watched my videos, you know I harp on about this. It's very rare that someone pulls their credit report and it's exactly what they thought. So check your credit report at least once a year. I would advise twice a year. Always use check my file. The reason why I say use check my file is because a lot of people get caught up because they, use the free credit check on their bank account or clear score or whatever. The check my file is, from what I've seen, the most comprehensive credit report. I had a client about 2 weeks ago now who pulled their credit report, and on their Equifax part of the check my file, it showed a default. But on Experian and TransUnion, there was no default. So they had no clue because they didn't have a combined credit report that they looked at. So check your credit report. I'll say it again. Check your credit report. Understand what's on there. Can also help you avoid people doing fraud because you can see if any searches have been done, if any accounts have been taken out that you didn't take out. Speak to a mortgage professional. Don't go on TikTok. Don't go on Instagram and get your mortgage advice. Speak to a professional that's not going to charge you for the conversation, someone that you'll be able to tell what you're looking to do and give you advice. And like if you're working with me, I'll actually give you an illustration. So an illustration is essentially what the mortgage would look like if you were to take it out. And I don't charge for that. So you have all the information that you, your family, whoever is involved in this can make an informed choice. My name is Anthony Lindsay, and I do want to stress to you, I'm here to just share information from my 30 years of working in finance. I talk to people about mortgages every day. Not everybody becomes my client, but I do hear similar questions. So I make these videos to unpack the things that people regularly ask me. It's not designed to replace speaking to a professional, speaking to someone who's going to understand your individual circumstances. And always remember that your home is at risk if you don't keep up the repayments on your mortgage. So you're going to want to move into this as an informed person who's done their research, who's not thinking emotionally. And that's why these videos are useful because it may raise some thoughts that you hadn't thought about before. Hopefully, you've enjoyed the content, and hopefully, you have people in your circle that this may be useful to. Please share, please subscribe, and if there's a topic that you'd like for me to talk about, make sure you put that in the comments. If you would like to book an appointment, my QR code is right there. I don't know if it's there or there, but my QR code is right there. You can book an appointment. There's no fee for it. You won't go through to a VA or a PA or some sales funnel. You'll be able to have an appointment with me. I'll answer your questions. No pressure, no selling, just answers to your questions that you can either pursue your first buy to let property, or maybe after speaking to me, you might realize that actually it's not something that you want to do. But either way, thanks for watching. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, and most importantly, make sure that you share this with someone who might find it useful.